City of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded August 7, 2025.
All right, it's 1 o'clock. We'll bring the meeting to order. Candy, can we have a roll?
Barrent.
Here.
Kirschling.
Here.
Rosick. Here. Pingle.
Here.
Zenner.
Here.
All right, we're all here and present. Next is the President's report. The only thing I'd like to do is welcome past commissioners, President Moore and Secretary Ostrowski. The mayor is also here, which we'll hear from a little later, and the President of the Council, Mr. Christensen. Number 3, approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, Mrozek.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 4, confirmation of bills.
I went through the bills. Everything looks really good.
Okay.
Jumped out. So I'll make a motion to approve the bills.
Second by Mrozek.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Chief, Target Solutions, can you talk a little bit about that?
Target Solutions is actually one of the software programs that we use to input our data when it comes to fire and EMS training within the Stevens Point Fire Department. It's a tracking resource for us. It allows us to put in the hours that we train on certain things, allows us to continue with our credentialing and different certifications, and also allows us to be able to use that for certain training templates as the fire department moves forward with things.
Okay, then the reason I bring that up is because that's a couple $1,000s on the fire department and ambulance. Any other questions, comments? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Discussion on the process to hire a new police chief upon or before the current police chief retires. So, the chief is retiring, all in good time, and we want to get ahead of it, hiring a new chief. So we're not waiting at the last minute, so I thought putting this on the agenda for discussion would be a wise decision. What I would like to see happen, and give me your opinions as I'm going, this is an open discussion, but to distribute the police chief's profile and his job description to all the commissioners, and then also with the city attorney, Sandy from Human Resources, the assistant chiefs, and the fire chief, looking for feedback, any additions, editing to the job description, if there's anything over the years we'd like to see improved, changed, etc. And then from my standpoint, I think what we have is a special meeting, if people are available the week of August 18th, to give a little bit of time for people to give some feedback of what they'd like to see. And then sometime in the week of August 21st, start the application process. Keep that process open for roughly 3 to 4 weeks. Close the process roughly September 19th, and then have one commissioner, if Denise is the liaison, would be willing to do it, but have Denise and Candy go through the applications to see.
I'm not the,
or
yeah,
Tom,
Thomas.
excuse me.
Thomas.
Tom, excuse me. But to go through the applications, because I know we're going to get people that don't even qualify. And so we can vet who qualifies, and then we bring those applications to the commission and vet those roughly at the end of September, and then start setting interviews the first week of October, roughly October 6th. And once we narrow it down, then I think bringing other city members city department heads, and this is open for discussion, so I'm looking for feedback on this. The pullover chief, maybe the sheriff, maybe the WSP chief, the medical community we've brought in the past, and have them interview candidates as well. But I don't want to get those people and waste their time with 15 candidates. I think we narrow it down to 3 to 5, and then we get together as a commission, and if we need to have further interviews, we have those further interviews. And then at that time, hopefully by the beginning of December, end of November, we put out an offer, and hopefully within a short period of time, maybe it's a week, the candidate accepts or rejects, and the commission does what it needs to do depending on what happens.
I think, one, are we planning on doing a nationwide search, regional search, or a statewide search?
I think we should do a national search. I would encourage anybody from within the department to apply. A couple of places that I had written down is there's one called I Hire Law Enforcement, which Candy found. We've used Indeed, WileyNet, put something on the city site. Sandy from HR, I believe you had a site that you had in mind. And then the Wisconsin Chiefs Association site, I think, would be a good place to advertise it. How do you all feel? 3 weeks, 3 to 3.5 to 4 weeks for?
I think even if you put it out for a month, we've done that in the past. And when we look at doing interviews, how we've done it, and I mean, we could have several different panels of stakeholders, but do those all in one day. If we're having somebody that's
Sure.
coming up from Florida, we've had that in the past.
Absolutely.
We don't want them coming up 3 times. We can do them in one day, so.
But that's
could
quite a
really-
ways down the road.
Right,
Towards
but-
the end of the process.
We don't need to pigeonhole just to 3 weeks. What I'm saying is if we move that out to a month for application process, we're going to have enough time to do those interviews. It isn't like we're going to have to stagger them.
Sure, I just don't want to run out of time.
Right.
Is the thing.
And at the special meeting, is that where we're going to determine how this process, or who we're, exactly going to, if we go that route, to inviting others in for part of the interview process and what that looks like?
That's the way I would see it, is we get the, right now, we get the police chiefs, the profile, the job description, again, get that to the people I'd mentioned, and then we have a special meeting sometime in August. I just don't want to wait until first week in September, and then it's just one meeting, and then we run out of time. I don't want to have that happen. So I think setting the parameters at a special meeting in August, taking in the feedback that we get from the people that I had mentioned of if there's any changes, any adjustments, any additions, any deletions, that the commission then makes that decision at that point in time. And we give the go-ahead for Candy to publish it, and we open it up for applications. Now, Candy does have in your packet the description of the position, as well as what we would be putting out there for an advertisement for the position.
And the only thing that I just want to put out there too is that, while it's not mentioned, and again, the 5 of us will decide on this, but as far as for the interview process, I think we've come to realize too, our Mary Kneebone, our liaison, is, she is a good advocate, and I know in the past that we haven't utilized, or the PFC hasn't utilized her, to the degree that she could be utilized, and I think that she would be an important factor as sitting in on those those interviews. But again, that's something that, the five of us can decide, but
Sure.
I just want to throw her name out there too.
Sure, and I don't disagree. If Mary's willing to, and the commission, that's the direction the commission wants to go, then we can make that decision at that meeting when we put everything together and finalize what we're going to put out there. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that timeline good? And just to reiterate, the commission, part of 6213, this is part of our job. This is a huge part of our job, is to hire the chiefs. This is a very serious thing. So, anything else?
Joe?
All right. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. And just for suggestions, but first, I want to base something in sarcasm. I know there's been some thought put into this, and this is probably the first time some of you are hearing about it, so I hope everybody's okay with that. But I want to say, as a suggestion, the university you mentioned, the school district, because we have liaisons that work in the school districts as community stakeholders, if you will.
Okay.
Places like the Salvation Army, people that deal with law enforcement on a regular basis, and that's up for you guys to decide, you know better. But I would encourage you to do that. One other place you can list, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities offers it as a free service. Sandy should be aware of that stuff, so take advantage of everything you can for that nationwide search.
Very good. Thank you. All right, we don't have to take any action on this. Number 6, comments from Mayor Wiza related to Stevens Point and Park Ridge developing a fire district with possible discussion. Mr. Mayor.
I really do try and stay out of this stuff. And for the few funny looks I got on the last sarcastic comment, those were almost the same words that were used a month ago here when Comptroller Treasurer Ladick was giving his presentation. So I had to write this down because after watching the meeting from last month, I have to admit, I was wanting to say things that a mayor shouldn't really say. And with me, that should mean something. To say I was hot is a gross understatement. I also need to be very clear, no one asked me to do this. I watched the meeting after seeing some of the headlines, and this is me talking, only for me. These are my words, and only mine. First, let me start by saying I offered to try and have one-on-one meetings with the commissioners to have a more private conversation about things I'm going to say, but I was basically told if you've got something to say, you can say it in front of the whole Police and Fire Commission. So here I am. I need to be clear on that as well. The Comptroller, the way he was treated last month is unacceptable. The very first slide said this is an introductory presentation. He offered to meet with President Kirschling prior to the presentation, and the same with President Menzel. Both turned him down and said they could wait. Others were informed of the concept as far back as June 24th, when they were given a PowerPoint to review. He was 3 slides into a 36-slide presentation and was interrupted by a maelstrom of questions. First one was if we took the allowed levy increases, why was there a 0% increase in the operational budget? Well, I think Comptroller Treasurer Ladick explained that pretty well. Almost all of that money went to providing compensation adjustments so we can keep up with the market rates of our employees and they're not leaving for other communities that can pay more. Everything went to salaries and benefits. PD and FD employees have contractual, obligated annual increases, and we try and keep our non-represented employees in line with cost of living, CPI or COLA. If a joint fire department happened freeing up money for other departments, how would the breakdown be distributed to other departments? That came from Commissioner Mrozek. It isn't known, since this was only an introduction, nor is it the purview of the PFC. You stay in your lane, I stay in mine. This falls under the Common Council anyway, And nobody, neither Corey, myself, or anyone else would be able to answer that question, since the PFC was the first group to see the presentation. Well, 3 of the slides, anyway. Three slides into a 36-slide presentation. Then Commissioner Mrozek said, we budget what our directors think, oh, I'm sorry, this is for me. We budget what our directors think they need, but they're estimates. There are savings that our directors realize from time to time, and that's exactly what we'd expect from diligent professional leaders. Unspent money goes back into the general fund. Your comment at 31 minutes and 15 seconds into the meeting said, we tell FD and PD to spend everything. That's out of line. Good stewards of taxpayer money and good oversight would be to ask your directors to budget appropriately and find savings and efficiencies where they can, like they always do. Our directors estimate for projects on the higher end. They should be commended for returning taxpayer money. As Corey explained, that money then goes into the capital budget to get other projects done. It doesn't go into some hoarding account like was suggested. Also, there was a comment about nothing being done on the PD garage. That's very frustrating. Both PD and Parks have put in an awful lot of time and effort to try and secure funding for this garage. At the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, trying to get it done. It didn't happen this year. But that's not anybody's fault. They continue to work very hard to find ways to make that happen, and to say nothing is being done is disrespecting the police chief, the parks director, and the host of others who have been working on that project. Will this joint fire department concept raise taxes? Likely. If we don't do this joint fire department, will taxes go up? Likely. Denise seemed very concerned about transparency and not raising taxes, but 3 minutes earlier said spend everything in your budget? Which is it? Are you concerned about taxes, or are you concerned about spending everything the departments are allowed to spend? This was a preliminary presentation on a concept. Corey mentioned that several times. Denise went further to push on specifics, focusing on the word should. Will it or won't it, she asked. Then it was asked about specific legal requirements that just haven't been explored yet. Again, this was a preliminary presentation, and you were only 3 slides into it. All of our department heads, including the police and fire chiefs, which you hire, by the way, are professional experts in their field. They are tasked with doing their jobs, and there is oversight to make sure those jobs are being done in accordance with the policies the oversight bodies and the Common Council set. There needs to be a reasonable amount of respect given to each of them, and some latitude for them to do their jobs, which we hired them to do. You don't need to be looking over their shoulder every 4 hours, spending countless times, nor do we need to be quick to accuse. Such was the case at your last meeting, and I find that behavior unbecoming of the members of this body. I will not tolerate our staff being treated in that manner by anyone, let alone commissioners or committee members. As I said earlier, I would much rather have had these comments made outside of a public meeting, but that was refused. I apologize for those to whom this does not apply. I realize we have a few commissioners who have less than 2 years of experience on this body, so I'd like to remind you all that the League of Wisconsin Municipalities has a webinar for PFC members. One is coming up on November 6th and 7th of this year from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. both days. You have a budget for this training, and I strongly suggest you attend. This can better explain your role and what is and is not within your statutory oversight. I really thank you all for agreeing to serve on this commission. It's not easy, but it can be easier if we try and focus on the oversight and avoid the items that are not part of your oversight that you've been charged with. If at any time you feel this job is not for you, you are unwilling or unable to live up to the expectations charged to you by the people of Stevens Point through my office and the Common Council, or you do not feel comfortable following the general rules of decorum and respect, I'll be happy to accept your resignation and search for a replacement. Thank you for your time.
I because of discussion, I want to give any member of the commission that, and I don't want this to turn into an argument or a debate, but I think out of respect for the commissioners, because there was some pretty strong things said, that if anybody has anything that they want to say, that they can say it now.
It doesn't warrant it. I mean, and as far as the mayor, as being the only woman on this commission, you gotta have tough skin, because you're not the first, you won't be the last, and I come prepared. I do speak, and you know, and and a lot of things. I mean, I'm a very easy target too, but I've got tough skin. And as far as, again, with transparency, the mayor asked to meet with me prior to the meeting. And I did not feel that was appropriate, because there's 5 of us here. And if the mayor stated he was going to meet with each one of us individually, but to pick me out, that he wanted me to come in and meet with him privately regarding this, I didn't feel that was appropriate. I felt that if he did have something to say, and again, this was prior to the meeting, that he could, you know, come forward and speak to all of us. Because yes, I do believe in transparency. The 5 of us here, we are not elected, we are citizens. And I think people forget that. We're citizens of Stevens Point. And when we look at things, we're looking at things through their eyes. And I personally feel that if you are an elected official, you also have to have tough skin, because things are going to be thrown at you, things are going to be questioned at you. And we are unique from the council, that we, you know, we govern the police and fire department. They don't have input, nor does the mayor have input of how we run things. And, you know, at the end of the day, I do come prepared. I will stand behind anything that I say, and I feel I do my job. I do my job. I know the departments. I do my research. I know not just the management. I know the line staff. So, you know, your comments are what they are, Mayor. You have a right to speak. And, you know, at the end of the day, I feel I do my job. And it may be uncomfortable. And sometimes I feel, being the woman on here too, the only woman, I say things that a lot of my constituents are thinking about saying, but don't. And, you know, I'll be real open to everyone here too. My term comes up, so everyone's aware. One of us, if you're not familiar, their 5 years comes up, you know, once a year, and mine comes up in the end of April. I'll publicly put this out there. The mayor does do our appointments. And I can tell everyone here that I personally believe, because of maybe how things have been shaken up since I've been on here, he won't reappoint me because of that. So, and if you didn't catch it, the mayor just acknowledged his head and said yes. So, you know, citizens, really think about that. If you're a person who does your job and has the courage to speak up and say a lot of times what needs to be said, we have a mayor who doesn't like that. And I know the writing's on the wall, that I will not be reappointed. And I want everyone to remember that and think about that. That's all I have to say.
and this is just from me. I'm not speaking on behalf of any other commissioner. I'm speaking what I saw in Corey's presentation. It was explained to us that this was an exploration. And an exploration, you take time and you do research and you find out what are the good things, what are the bad things, where are the inefficiencies, where are the efficiencies, where can we save money. And I'm speaking from my standpoint, is we were told we had an August 11th deadline to get back to you, to Comptroller Ladick. And then it was talked about that we're going to have a November referendum. And then we want to put this in place by January 1st of 2025 so we can take advantage of it in 2026. It'd be 1 year, I think. And from my standpoint, exploring something goes much further beyond than a presentation, and then having just a little bit of time to go, all right, this is the good, this is the bad, this is the ugly. We know how government works. It does take time. And I feel that the commission, we were concerned, and we did ask a lot of questions. And like I had said in the end of that meeting, it was not directed at you, Corey. It was because the commissioners genuinely were concerned and had questions of, okay, how does this work? And I think of what I had saw is, was everything explored? And that's why all of a sudden, boom, the questions started. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, Mayor. I don't believe that anybody was unbecoming as a member. We did ask questions. We did ask hard questions of Corey, and Corey knew a lot of questions, and there was some that he didn't, which was expected. So from my standpoint, that's why a lot of questions were answered, or excuse me, asked. And we methodically moved through it and moved through the presentation, and Corey's here today to answer some more questions. Does anybody else have any thoughts? All right. If that is it, I think we can move on. We're good to move on? All right. Number 7, follow-up from Comptroller Treasurer Ladick regarding joint fire district discussion.
Okay, so I wanted to follow up on some of the questions that were raised before that I didn't have immediate answers to. So, Joe, if you don't mind running the slides again. So, getting to the first slide, the question was asked, what is the annual payment from Park Ridge? So for 2025, that was $103,072. But I think we discussed this a little bit, that going into 2026, that does jump pretty significantly because of the referendum that was passed on the city side. So we renegotiated the contract in 2025 and basically explained to Park Ridge that the cost of providing fire service overall has gone up. So your share of this cost then, the share didn't change, but the amount that share is has increased. So Park Ridge was agreeable to that. They understood that. So for 2026, that number is going to be $135,877. How we come to that number is we base it on a formula that's 50% based on equalized value, or basically property tax value, 50% based on per capita, and then also we included 3% annual increases. It does include both an amount for operating as well as an amount for capital. So because those are both, legitimate costs that we have. The Park Ridge percentage of total expenses is 2.48%. And if we went to a joint fire department, we would likely stick with the same formula unless there was reason to change it. So Park Ridge would continue to pay for 2.48% of fire department expenses. One thing I did want to clarify is that Park Ridge expenses would not be, or Park Ridge payments to us would not be going away. They would still be paying in as part of the joint fire agreement. So on to the next slide. Fund balance use in the capital budget. Just wanted to provide this slide. This just shows how much we've put back into capital from fund balance. It depends on how much the departments return to us, but basically annually that's ranged from about $650,000 up to $1.1 million. Basically we increase it if we're having really good budget years and fund balance is increasing, and then we'll decrease that amount if fund balance is going down or if we don't see as much being returned from the departments. As far as how much debt do we have outstanding for police and fire, not too much. Part of that is because we do turn around levy-supported debt pretty quickly, so we do try to pay off debt quickly. But the total outstanding debt for police at the end of 2024 was $1.3 million. Fire was just shy of $1.5 million. So those are pretty reasonable numbers. And then I also have the annual debt service payments. So police, for 2024, police was $182, fire was $434. Wanted to talk a little bit about what is a levy limit exception adjustment, because this isn't the only levy limit exception. So the state provides a limited number of levy exceptions adjustments for various purposes, such as to incentivize service delivery models that they like or accommodating extenuating circumstances. One of those levy limit exceptions that is taken advantage of, for our community is there's an exception for a countywide EMS service. So, and that's actually completely exempt from the levy limits. So Portage County currently has that, since we do have a countywide EMS system. Even though they're currently completely exempt from the levy limits in terms of how much they want to spend on EMS. I will say we do negotiate with them. I'm part of the negotiating team that bargains with them, and certainly they are not at all loose with that money. So even though they have unlimited authority to raise taxes for EMS, they're usually pretty constrained in terms of what they want to increase the levy by. You also have the exceptions that we've talked about for joint fire departments or joint EMS districts, which is the CPI plus 2%. We have exceptions for unreimbursed expenses related to an emergency or disaster. That's just a one-year exception, but if we would have, a tornado or something, there is a levy limit exception to be able to rebuild your community if you need to. Refunded or rescinded taxes, if we have to give a big tax refund to somebody because they challenge us in court on an assessment, that's also an exception. And then increase or decrease for transfer of services. We utilized this when we transferred dispatch responsibilities to the county. We took a levy limit exception actually downward in order to transfer that levy capacity to the county so that they could take over that service. And this isn't an all-inclusive list of levy limit exceptions, but this is just a few of them just to kind of highlight that levy limit exceptions are something that is allowed by state statute, and in general, there's somebody in every municipality that should understand the levy limit exceptions and should be filling out the levy limit worksheet. Going on to the next slide. So factors impacting the property tax levy, and I know there was concern about this, and unfortunately I don't have real good news for you. I wish I had better news in terms of what our overall outlook is on the property tax levy, but there's really a couple of different factors that are really going to impact the property tax levy. One is revaluations. The next one is scheduled for 2027, and that shifts the tax burden but does not necessarily provide more revenue for the city. But it does have a real impact on taxpayers when that tax burden is shifted. Some people might come out with a lower tax bill, others might come out with a significantly higher tax bill. Catching up with capital project inflation. So we've had really dramatic inflation in terms of the cost of capital projects, where basically we used to always tie how much we're repaying in principal with how much we're borrowing every year. And unfortunately, because capital projects have inflated so much, we're not able to do that anymore. So we're trying to get that caught back up so that that is back into balance. So, but City Council has set a target of 4.5% annual increases to bring that back into balance. Then we also have two major projects, City Hall and Business 51. They're major projects that will need to be on top of the 4.5% target for annual increases. And this is something that I covered pretty extensively at our May Finance Committee meeting in terms of the capital projects that we have coming and some of the expected levy impacts for that. And then you also have the Joint Fire Department exception, potentially, you know, if that's something that we decide to pursue.
No, I'm gonna, I have a few questions.
Sure, go ahead.
And I'm gonna ask them as they come up in the
Go ahead.
slides, and if
Yep.
they don't come up in the slides, so you can keep going through, I'll ask them at the end. But one question as it relates to the property tax levy, when you put your computation together of, it was, if I remember right, $136,000 is what we would have to play with. Now, in that, did you pull out the fire department's budget out of that levy calculation for there to be money available for other departments? Meaning, was it double dipped or was it actually pulled out? And does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. So basically, with calculating the levy, I pulled out that it was actually 139,000, but
130. Okay, my
but
apologies.
pretty close.
Yeah.
But yeah, I basically put that on top because the way that it would work with the levy limits is we still get to take our 1% net new construction adjustment, and then the Joint Fire Department adjustment would be on top of that.
Okay, so you did take out the fire department's budget. Because it's a
Well-
percentage of the whole works, right?
So it's a percentage of the whole works, but so basically you've got a 1% adjustment for net new construction, and that's on your total operating levy. I didn't pull out the fire department from that operating levy from that 1% because that's not how the state would do it on the levy limit worksheet.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay. And then sort of a schedule of tax rate impacts as far as what we have coming. Like I said, we've got a lot of capital projects coming. So for December 2025 tax bills, we anticipate putting half of City Hall on the levy. December 2026 tax bills, we plan on putting the other half of City Hall on the tax bills. So we're trying to split it into 2 years, basically, so that it's not a huge hit in 1 year. And then for the remaining 4 years, 27, 28, 29, and 30, we've got different phases of Business 51 that'll be taking place, which will have similar tax levy impacts to what half of City Hall would be. And then also for 2027, I already mentioned the revaluation. So basically, we're trying to get through 6 years here, but it's 6 years of probably some increases unless we get significant grant funding for Business 51. But I like to kind of prepare for the worst, so that's why I'm saying, okay, this is the worst that it could be is we've got 6 years where we've got a somewhat substantial tax increase every year.
Do you have any dollar amounts as to what that kind of looks like per year that our citizens would be looking at?
I do have some dollar amounts, and we'll get into that in the coming slides. So as far as what would the potential impact on property taxes be. Basically, you're looking at your base increase, which on a $200,000 home would be $80. Then plus half of City Hall would be $89. And then the joint fire department, if we used all $204,000 for operations, I don't think that we're going to be doing that, but if we did, that would be $18, so a total of $187 on a $200,000 home. So, and that would be for 1 year.
And then the other ones that you had going to December of 2030, do you have another slide that would show the additional tax rate increase? Because it would, I'm just assuming this is 2026, $187 on a $200,000 home, and then, you know.
It would continue to go, so, and it would continue to be about in that same ballpark of around $187.
So even in the 2030 with the additional Business 51 Phase 3, so would we stay at 187, or would those additional phases add more to the taxpayers?
You know, it would stay around the $187 unless construction costs go up. I mean, that's the only variable that we deal with, is if construction costs go up or something unexpected happens, you know, it could be higher than that, but I'm hoping to keep it around the $187.
Good.
Okay. And then compounding growth of 3%, annual 3% increases on $204,000. So basically, I took the number, $18 was a rounded number. The actual number would be $17.72. But then over time, because it's growing by 3% a year, you have the compounding effect. So by 2036, you're looking at around $23 for a $200,000 home. If we're considering a $204,000 use of levy capacity for the Joint Fire Department. So, and then I took the more likely $139,000 that could be used for operations, and that gets you down a little bit. So for the Joint Fire Department portion, then that would be $6 per 100,000 or $12 per $200,000 in value. So on a $200,000 house, you'd be looking at $181. And then, so that makes a little bit of a difference, but not a huge amount of difference. So, and then this is compounding it with 3% annual increases. You can see on a $200,000 home in 2027, it starts around $1,207, and then by 2036, be up to $1,575. So, and then the next slide. Now, this question was directed more toward the fire chief, so I'm going to let Chief Moody take this one if he's comfortable.
Sure. So under the terms of changes on infrastructure, maintenance, hydrants, road conditions, et cetera, in the Village of Park Ridge, for those of you who don't know, the Village of Park Ridge has started a construction project. They're doing 2 main corridors in the village and redoing the roadways and the infrastructure underneath the roads. That would include the fire hydrants as well for our continued fire suppression services in the village. What that does is tactically and operationally allow us to deploy differently. Whether we're hooked to a hydrant or if we have to use outside water sources when we don't have those hydrants available. So hydranted versus non-hydranted areas. Currently we work in both. There's areas even in the city that are non-hydranted currently as we speak. As an example, off of Burlowski up by Oxbow, and there's some other areas within the city that are non-hydranted that we train for those situations. So we would continue to work with the village as they develop their infrastructure. We would continue to develop our tactics and operations around how that deployment would look.
Good.
Yep, I think so. The other question that I wanted to address is the city able to keep money separate and segregated for specific purposes? And yes, we do have a system of funds set up, which includes the general fund, which is the main operating fund for the city, as well as 65 other funds. This is known as fund accounting. Many of these funds do have specific legal restrictions or are under the jurisdiction of specific bodies. Examples include the room tax fund. 70% has to be used for tourism promotion and development. That's under the Tourism Commission. We have that set up in a separate fund. That money is kept separate. We don't dip into it for other things. We have TIF district funds that must be used for eligible TIF expenses, and there's statutory requirements that go along with that. We have debt service funds, must be used for repaying debt. We now have business improvement districts. They have their separate funds. They're under the bid boards, and they must be used to benefit that specific district. I also wanted to note we do have a thorough annual audit conducted by an accounting firm to ensure that we're complying with these legal requirements, that we're using money appropriately. So I just wanted to clarify that, you know, can we keep money separate for a joint fire department and sort of not dip into that for other things? And, you know, that's basically what we do in city finance and the Comptroller Treasurer's Department, is keep a lot of different pots of money separate. And luckily, we've got a good computer system, a good accounting system that allows us to do that effectively. Also, would this create a budget surplus? How would it be allocated? So at this point, we're anticipating this would help us to avoid a deficit as opposed to generating a surplus. And also, as the mayor alluded to, the budgeting process involves multiple officials, not just myself, but the mayor, the finance committee, the common council. So at this point, we're not really prepared to speak to what budgetary decisions we would make in 2027. But to try to answer that a little bit in terms of, well, what else would you do if we had a deficit? I've got my next slide, which is basically the other potential solutions, and I did also share this with the city council. You know, we could do a vehicle registration fee. We could look at other fees and charges. At this point, it's unclear how much this might generate, but it's something to look at. Could consider a levy limit referendum to maintain the services. I call this a keep the lights on referendum. In November of 2024, Madison was able to pass a referendum like this, but I think Madison is a sort of unique municipality. Baraboo also proposed a referendum just to continue current services, and that referendum did fail. And there were significant impacts on that community when the referendum did fail. You know, you could look at cuts to programs, services, and personnel, although I'm not saying that that's desirable by any means. We could look for employee concessions, reduce or eliminate cost of living adjustments, make adjustments to the health plan, or either the health plan coverage or the contribution percentages. We may need multiple solutions to get us through the next 10 years. So, you know, one of the reasons why I'm proposing this is I don't think that this is necessarily the only solution, but I think it's a solution to evaluate to say, can this be part of the mix? Because we can only go so far with the wheel tax, for example. Before we have the highest vehicle registration fees in the state, especially with the county already charging a wheel tax. So, you know, there are some things here, there might be some room here, but I'm not just trying to get through 1 year, I'm trying to get through 10 years. And I'm trying to think about what happens over 10 years if our net new construction stays at 1% and inflation stays around 2.5% to 3%. And how do we make up that gap, you know, year after year after year. So that's kind of what I'm getting after. I'd also note that even though I threw these options up there, I'm not saying that they're all good options. For example, going without cost of living adjustments has an impact. It has an impact on staff morale. People pay attention to that. They notice that okay, we don't have the budget for cost of living adjustments anymore. Am I better off at a different employer? How that affects protective services in particular is that in the past we've had issues with compression between the represented employees who are basically guaranteed an increase through their union agreements and the management employees who are not guaranteed a raise. And if you're not able to provide that cost of living adjustment to your management employees, but you still do to the, frontline police and fire employees. Well, at some point, people don't even want to be promoted to, say, an assistant chief position because you haven't kept your compensation for those positions competitive. So those are some of the issues that we've encountered in the past. I think we've done a lot of work on the pay plan to get it to where it needs to be so that it's competitive in this current environment. So you hate to go backwards on some of this stuff, but at the same time, if we want to know what are all the options, these are all of the options that the council could take a look at. And I was specifically asked, before I did this presentation to the council, one of the council members said, hey, could you include in your presentation, what are the other options in addition to this one? So that's what I threw together for that slide. And that's all that I have for my update. So.
All this was primarily based around finance and going back to what I had said earlier, what part of the commission's problem was, and I'm going to speak for myself, but by reading their questions last time, part of their issue is how fire districts work. And generally you have multiple communities that can come together, like let's just use Hull, Plover, Stevens Point, where we're coming together and we're putting our resources where maybe we might not need 2 chiefs. We may not need, we could get rid of a couple vehicles, a couple of engines, and now we're making efficiency moves that are starting to make money, not make money, but save money. And which leads me into, I have 2 questions. Have you or Mayor, have you thought about looking at a referendum to just increase operational budgets rather than going through all this rigmarole?
So it's something that we actually discussed in 2023, and at that time the council decided not to go in that direction, and the main reason why was there was some uncertainty about pursuing a referendum just to basically continue current services. It's just a little bit of a harder sell to the public. But the other fortunate thing that happened in 2023 is then we had the talk about shared revenue come up, and that looked very promising and ended up coming through for us. So in 2023, basically, we were in almost a similar position of saying, hey, what are we going to do to balance the 2024 budget? And we were looking at options, and basically the main options that we looked at were, we looked at a referendum, we looked at the municipal vehicle registration fee known as a wheel tax, and we looked at a transportation utility. Since then, the transportation utility idea has been declared illegal by the Wisconsin Supreme Court, so we can't do that anymore. A referendum could still be an option, but I think that it definitely comes with some complications, because one of the big questions, for instance, with going with an operating referendum is, do you say, well, we just need enough to get through 1 year, and then do it every year and say, hey, we just need 3% inflation to get through this year, but then you're going to referendum every year. Or you do what Baraboo did, where they said, well, we want enough money to get through 5 years, so you ask for a lot more than you would need for just 1 year because you're trying to get through 5 years, and then the public says, okay, you're saying you need a couple $1 million just because, well, inflation. And that just, for Baraboo, that didn't work out. That referendum failed by a margin of about 2 to 1. So I think we're still kind of paying attention to what things look like in terms of the municipalities that are doing a sort of cost to continue referendum or keep the lights on referendum. But it's definitely an option. It's just a matter of, whether it's a feasible option or not is hard to say. And
just want to expound on that a little bit. There's pros and cons to all of the options. And we decided as a council a couple of years ago when we talked about wheel tax or a levy referendum. All that really does is puts additional tax burden on citizens of Stevens Point, the property taxpayers. It doesn't spread it out. So a wheel tax is only paid by city residents. That's effectively a property tax in disguise. The levy referendum is literally a property tax increase, putting all of that burden on the residents of Stevens Point, but not really addressing the others who use our services, but may not contribute as much. An example would be the transportation utility. At that point, schools will pay that, churches will pay that, nonprofits will pay that. Arguably, they use all of our services already, and most of them don't pay property taxes. They're tax exempt. So what we tried to do is find options that kind of, to use a metaphor that Corey used before, spread the peanut butter on a bigger piece of bread, right? And not put all of that burden on just the citizens of Stevens Point. So parking fees. Parking fees are paid for by some city residents and those who are not city residents. So they help share that burden. A joint fire department arguably could be shared with the Village of Park Ridge in this case. And to go back a little further, talking with Park Ridge and, Hull and Plover, they have existing fire departments. With Park Ridge, we already provide all the service. So that's the least amount of red tape to get through. I don't think if you ask Plover if they want to combine with Stevens Point and one of the chiefs has to go, I don't think that would be received well on either side. So that's a little more complicated. But we already do all these things for Park Ridge. So it's kind of easy. Some of the other things were cuts to programs and services. Ideally, we don't want to do that. But maybe people who live outside the city and rent our lodges. I got the Parks Director right now looking at how do our fees hit in line with surrounding municipalities. Boat slip, for example. I think it's $750 a year for a boat slip. But I know that some private places charge $1,000 a year. That's not going to balance our budget, but little things will help. So my philosophy, at least, and I think I speak for at least the majority of the council in saying we don't want to put all that burden on the taxpayers that are already paying. We're going to tax people out of their homes. So what we want to do is try and find options that kind of spread it around a little bit.
But that's where the taxes are coming from, is the people that have the homes, correct?
The taxes, yes, but the renters pay that arguably too through their rent.
But they're getting the service within Stevens Point.
Yes.
Someone that's coming in to stay somewhere or coming for the weekend, that's just for the weekend. They're not really.
We get room tax money that we can use 30% of. But
Sure,
that's
I
set in
understand
stone.
that.
We can't mess with that. More stays means more of that 30%. But I guess what I'm talking about here is spreading it out to different communities, users. Yes, we're still going to get some city taxpayers that rent our lodges. But if we had even a non-resident surcharge, that's an option. So we're looking at all of those right now. Our permit fees, we're looking at, are we in line with other municipalities? If you want to replace your water heater, I think it's $50. Is $50 reasonable for the permit, or is Wausau, Rapids, Marshfield, and Wapaka charging $100? Where are we in line with that? So we're looking at increasing those fees as well. These are just some of the options we're exploring. But I'd rather not do something that only affects people who are already paying the property tax to cover our services. I'd like to spread it out a little bit further to those who use our services but may not necessarily pay as much for them.
Do you know what, as a percentage of income that comes in, of people that don't use?
Not even a clue.
Because I don't mean any disrespect by this comment.
It's the first time I'm hearing about it.
But I can tell you it's probably like almost not much.
Think about this. Churches, schools, other nonprofits. Think of all the nonprofit, non-taxable entities that we have in this community that use our roads, use our emergency services, use our parks, but don't contribute the same as you and I as taxpayers.
But they wouldn't contribute, and they wouldn't contribute now. If they're not contributing then, they're not going to contribute in the future.
In some cases, they will. The transportation utility was a perfect example of that, but we can't do that anymore. But there are other ways to do that. If you like I said, a surcharge. If you are, I'm going to get in trouble no matter who I say. If you are a Madison resident who that's far away, they probably won't watch it. If you're a Madison resident who wants to come up and rent the Iverson Lodge, and you as a non-resident have to pay an extra $200 fee, that generates some. It's not a big solution. These are all little pieces. We've already picked all that low-hanging fruit, so we don't have any of that left. Now we're going for the one-offs. Little pieces that add up to covering the deficit.
It would be interesting, I will say this, and it would be interesting to see what would it look like if Hull was in, what would it look like if Plover was in, what are the efficiencies? And I think about it from a business standpoint, not I just completely from a business standpoint of how much more efficient can that district be by saving that amount of money, and then if taxing is really what the goal is to make more money, now you're not only being much more efficient, you are able to probably use much more levy, and you're able to raise not 139, you're able to raise quite a bit more than that. I don't know what that number is. Maybe it's in the millions. I don't know, but it's a lot about money, and if that's the case, exploring that
I got to tell you, Mr. President, I would not be the one want to be the one to ask Plover or Hull, because I don't think it's going to go over very well.
The worst thing that can say is no.
And that's not the worst thing. We know that already.
Well,
but I do want to point out that the state, through their budget, actually had, what was it, an innovation grant? So they created a big pool of money for what they call an innovation grant. And that was specifically for communities working together on whatever it is, road plowing or grass cutting or widget making, that they do. And if one could prove that they would save 10% or more by combining those services and working together, we would both benefit. Both communities would benefit. I called a meeting with all of the area municipal leaders, the Town of Hull president, Town of Plover president, Village of Plover president, Whiting, Park Ridge, everybody. We sat around the table and talked about what we did, along with several of our department heads. What can we do? Like, we have to drive around Park Ridge to plow a road. Can we get rid of some of the plowing and maybe work together on that? Could we, water utilities, road repairs, pothole fixing? We threw out every idea we could one afternoon, and it just turned out that if there were things we could collaborate on reasonably, we were already doing it, which disqualified us from the innovation grant. So out of the things that we did, the closest we got was a leaf vacuum that Plover has that we could borrow, but it didn't save us 10%, so we couldn't use anything.
sure.
So I got to tell you, our department heads are very, very diligent about trying to save money wherever they can. But combining communities that already have existing entities, I think is going to be a challenge. People want their own stuff, right? I like my house the way it is. You like your house the way it is.
Well, I'm talking from a EMS fire standpoint. I agree with what you're saying, but from an EMS fire standpoint, when you have two departments that are able to possibly respond faster, possibly able to save money, possibly be more efficient, that makes a lot of sense.
It certainly does. And Mr. President, with all due respect, we provided countywide ambulance service. Then Amherst had to have one. Then Plover had to have one. Are we more efficient? I don't know. Are we saving money? Absolutely not. It's not the city, it's the county. But that's how it works. So I don't know that would go over very well. I'd welcome you to call them and ask.
I just might.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I have some more for you.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
So, again, getting back to this is about money.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree or disagree that if we did a fire district, it's a bit of a small government within a government? And would you agree with that? Let me give you an example. So HR, if there's, because the district has employees, they have HR problems, they can't go to Park Ridge, they can't go to Stevens Point, because they're their own little entity. That costs money. Would have to outsource that. What about insurance? What about vehicle insurance? Who's going to pay for all that? How does that impact the $139,000? If there's legal counsel that needs to be brought in, there could be other services required by law that I don't even know about. I think this whole commission is learning about a fire district and how all this works. And so my question is again, because this is about money, have you thought or did an analysis on, all right, if we need HR, if we need legal, if we need health insurance to pay for, if we need vehicle insurance to pay for, we have all these things, how much is that going to cost the fire district?
So my thought on that right now is that we could put it as part of the intergovernmental agreement that basically Stevens Point would handle some of those functions that we currently handle. So since we have HR currently handling, HR duties for the fire department, that if we create a joint fire department, we could say, okay, we're going to continue to have the city of Stevens Point provide those HR services. And, or if it's IT, for example, you could have the city of Stevens Point still provide the IT services. So I would hope that we can maybe do this without creating, huge barriers to say, rather than saying, okay, fire chief, you're on your own now, you're no longer a part of us. My thought was, especially since we're 97.5% of this, that we would continue to use the city administrative staff.
And that wouldn't be a conflict of interest, and that's all within the rules of fire districts, that it's all applicable by law?
Yeah, to my understanding. So I know Neenah and Menasha have a fire district or joint fire department, and I believe it actually says in their agreement that the city of Neenah is going to be the one to take the lead on handling the administrative functions. So to my understanding, that's legal, but we can certainly explore that further to make sure that that's how it can work.
It would be good, and that was to my point earlier of exploration takes time, not deadlines of, all right, we need to go bam, bam, and then it's going to be implemented on this date. So these are things that since our last meeting that I've thought about.
Sure.
And is it correct, Corey, from the last time that you spoke, so you're looking to put this, and again, correct me if I'm wrong on any part of this, but you're looking to put this on the referendum in April? Is that correct? Or are you looking to do a special one in November? What's the thought process on that?
So basically, the referendum requirement would relate to optional powers.
Okay.
And that would be, so for sure Park Ridge would have to do a referendum to keep optional powers. And that the current thinking would be that would be April. But that's something that we still have to
Right, but
work out
I
with
thought
Park
like
Ridge.
the referendum thing, because you said that you'd be looking to disband the PFC, kind of have a joint referendum saying, because you'd have to take away the optional powers of the city of Stevens Point for the PFC and create a joint fire department. Because I think you said it's not like you're going to do them separately, it's one and done, and then you could come back later on and say, does the citizens of Stevens Point want, this under optional powers? And then was it a board would be created that would consist of, if it was, the PFC was dissolved, the optional powers, that it would consist of members of the city council on the board, and then however many from Park Ridge. Is that correct?
So basically,
I can jump in real quick on this.
you want to jump in? Okay.
So my reading of it right now is that this body would continue to exist. It would continue to have optional powers, but it would be in charge of just the Stevens Point Police Department.
Right.
Be a new body formed with probably one member selected by the village board for Park Ridge. That body would be in charge of just the joint fire department. And it would require a referendum in both communities in order for that new fire board to have optional powers. So this board would continue to exist, continue to have optional powers, but just be in charge of the police department.
Right, and so my understanding, again, to what as it pertains to the fire department, it would be looking for the fire department to dissolve the optional powers with the because it needs a referendum to do that, and create the joint fire department, and then you would have that in place. And then later on, you would have to decide if you wanted to put the referendum to put optional powers back on. Because I think Corey, you were saying that it's just simpler to try and do things that way, and then on the tail end, put it out to the voters if they want to go back to optional powers. So in that interim time, am I correct that it would be a board? Let's just say if this goes to referendum and it passes that way, it would be a board that would consist of a couple people from Park Ridge and whoever the mayor appoints from the council. Is that correct? For the joint board, not the optional powers.
A couple things in there. I think I do understand what you're saying. There would not be a referendum needed to quote unquote dissolve any optional powers. This board would retain its optional powers.
For the police.
For the police department.
Yes.
It would just no longer have authority over the fire department. There is not a referendum needed for that. There's just a referendum needed in both communities to create optional powers for the new fire board. That board could also operate without optional powers. Now, that would mean that the village board and the city council would be much more hands-on with fire operations than they've ever been.
Right, because the board would consist of, just like we have other boards, it would consist of the city council.
No, you would appoint members to it the same way members are appointed to our current PFC. In fact, typically you would not want to appoint council members to be on that. So it would be citizen members the same way this is.
I got a question on that, and kind of piggybacks off of what Denise is saying. What would be the process that you're going through on this, if it goes forward? I mean, I understand that you're looking at doing finance committee next month, correct?
Isn't it Monday you're doing it? Or this month, right?
Or
In
this
August.
month?
Yeah, it's this month, I thought.
So this month it's on as a non-action item.
Okay.
So it's on for just discussion and for people to ask additional questions and stuff. And then the thought process originally was that September we could make a decision, but that timeline could easily be stretched out. I mean, realistically, I know I said it was ideally we get this in place by January 1st, 2026, but it could go beyond that. And I'm thinking, I know that the city council has some questions too, so it's definitely possible that we can extend that timeline.
I guess, okay, that's what I guess the process is where I'm hung up on it. And you had just said you're not looking to abolish optional powers, but ultimately, when you're looking at finance, and obviously the city has control over the fire department budgetary. The mayor has control over the building. He could evict the fire department if he chooses. The board with optional powers here is in control. They have the authority and control and management of the fire department, and it's been fairly clear that this board is not really part of the solution or decision-making on whether we're looking to do a joint fire department. So I guess the only way I could look at that is you dissolve an optional powers board, and then you can do what you choose with the fire department. But how do you pursue this process without going through the board as is? And with Logan at the desk, I'm assuming he has the answer.
So my opinion right now, which could change, as you know, if we get closer to, a yes on this from the various, decision makers, I can obviously drill down more thoroughly, which would mean probably me contacting colleagues, reaching out to maybe Von Briesen. I was just in a conversation with one of their attorneys recently who says that they've done the setup process for a few of these. But the number one reason I don't believe that I don't believe an action of this PFC is necessary to take this step. The number one reason I believe that's true is that the statutes do not clearly say that that's required. I mean, if it was just explicit, it'd be right there. The other thing is that as you go through the statutes related to this, typically when you're looking at the statutes governing the PFC, you see references to the commission doing this, the commission doing that, the commission having this responsibility. When you look at the provisions governing the creation of a joint fire department, you see the city doing this, the city doing that, the village or the cities doing that, which I think the suggestion there is that it's the governing bodies, it's the village board and the city council that would do it. But also you need an ordinance to do this that'll basically say there's hereby created such and such, but also establish the number of members that would be on the fire board, their manner and method of appointment. Well, I guess the statute covers their manner and method of appointment, but the length of their terms also has to be established in that. So I think this is entrusted to those boards, but my guess is that the city council would they would probably take a recommendation in the negative from this body, even if it's just advisory. I think they would give that very serious consideration.
I guess when I look at it, when you see representative of the city, this board represents the city just in a different aspect. And as we are, since 1933, put in control of the management and operations of the fire department, I don't know how council could make that decision of moving forward with a joint fire department. I don't see how that can look any other way than that's a direct impact on the operation and management of a fire department. And council has zero oversight on that aspect. Like I said, they can control the budget, they control the house they live in, but they don't control the job or management. That's my opinion.
What I can tell you, again, there's nothing that expressly states in the statute that it takes an action of this body. I'm aware of any case law that has addressed that question, but I do think the use of the word city or cities or village board in the context of that is quite conspicuous when the rest of the 6213 material refers to the commission. So I suppose reasonable minds can differ about statutory interpretation, but that's what my interpretation is as of right now.
So just to clarify, kind of what I was saying at the last meeting, is this in a sense is a courtesy presentation? Because ultimately, you're not looking, I mean, it'd be great if you got our stamp of approval and said, yeah, we're behind this, but it's not necessary for whatever you guys are going to decide to do. Whether we agree or whether we disagree, you can proceed without any blessing on our end and just, put it to referendum. And that's my understanding. I just like.
Again, I'm not certain that there's a referendum necessary in order to create this, in order to bestow.
For the joint, you don't need a referendum for the joint departments? I thought Park Ridge would also have to. Let's set aside dissolving, right. Anything like that. That has to go to referendum.
So the thing that it's 100% clear that we would need a referendum for is in order for the newly created joint fire board, in order for that board to have optional powers, right. That takes a referendum. But I mean, you've got to remember that most PFCs throughout the state do not have optional powers. It's a little bit of a in the minority type situation.
So to go to a joint department with Park Ridge, to move from where we currently are, that has to go to referendum, and the citizens have to agree on it, or are you just saying that it's an agreement between you guys and Park Ridge, and it doesn't need to go?
Well, it has to be voted on by the village board and the common council.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, they are elected by the citizens to represent people, but
So just, like I said, I just want really clarity on that. Don't need our blessing. If the council and Park Ridge decide to become a joint department, that's all that needs to happen. The thing that would need to go to referendum is if the optional powers come into play, then that would have to go to referendum, and both municipalities would have to agree to that.
for the newly created
Okay.
joint board, yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
And you don't need to go to referendum to dissolve the optional powers.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that that's very clear.
So I think an important distinction there is when you talk about removing or dissolving optional powers, that's in the context of this board still staying in control of the fire department or police department. Well, you can't do optional powers for one but not the other, but all I can tell you is that the statutes do not contain any requirement to do what you're talking about.
What have other municipalities done when they've done this?
So that's where it would be like the next level of my research to look into. Like I haven't polled those other municipalities or spoken to them about it.
So
They're operating under the same statutes we are, though, and
So can you clarify that last statement? Because you said you can't have both, because we were told before, yes, optional powers would still remain for the police department. They would still, but did you just contradict that when you said that you can't have?
no,
both,
what I
so-
mean is, like, suppose this board were to have optional powers with regards to the police department,
Yes,
but not the fire department,
Right.
but still be in charge of the fire department.
right,
That's not something
right, that can't
in
happen.
the
That has to be a
statutes,
totally separate
right. Right.
number of people that would oversee the fire department in that case, because you can't have both.
Like, suppose that we weren't even talking about the joint fire department at all. Like, it wasn't even a concept that anyone
Right.
had even looked at. We could not have a referendum to remove this board's optional powers for just one of the departments. That wouldn't be lawful. It's either you get them both or you don't get it at all.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going,
Yeah.
or where I was going anyways.
This is extremely unique because obviously I think there's only 15 optional power PFCs in the state of Wisconsin. So it's a very unique situation.
Yeah, and to remind everybody, the reason we have optional powers is it takes the politics out of police, fire, and EMS. And that when you take the politics out of it, you have citizens like us, and there are no agendas. It's to take care of the citizens, both physically, making sure the response times are the very best they can be, and financially to make sure that they're staying within budget and they're being fiscally responsible and not spending foolishly. So that is a big reason that there is optional powers, like a major big reason. Does anybody else have any questions for the attorney or
I think it's
Comptroller Ladick?
it's clear now, because before we were like referendum, not referendum, what's going on, but you've made it very clear that the council is going to decide on this, as well as, Park Ridge, if that's going to happen. There's no referendum, there's no, other than the citizens showing up to the meetings, voicing their opinions. It's basically, if this is going to happen, it's just going to happen by the council and Park Ridge.
Yeah, and I've got a comment about that. I wish this didn't happen this way, because how do you tell somebody who's making like $20 an hour that you're now going to lose one day, because you're going to lose one day of work to pay for services that we're already providing, just so somebody else can get a raise. And that's what I think, as a citizen, I just wish there was a different way than this way, so.
Contact your state legislators and ask them to take action on shared revenue.
I mean, and I'm going to throw this out there, and I know this is a very touchy subject, especially for the mayor, in regards to what things that have happened. Have we ever put it out there? I mean, we do have, and I know Joe made comments, because Joe's been a business owner, and budgets and things like that. Have we just ever reached out to successful, business owners, as far as like, to say it, not for payment, but for them to maybe come in and like brainstorming too, to get people who actually have, business management, to take a look at our budgets, to take a look at our things, because we have fixed income here, and looking at a fresh set of eyes to seeing where things could be cut. And I know, Corey, you also stated before, your analogy was, if you can send your kid over to the house to have a meal over there, you were giving us that analogy, right? Takes a little pressure off the home. And I look at this too, if I'm going to piggyback on your analogy. Well, you don't go have dessert if you can't feed your family. So what things, do we service out there that, in a sense, is the dessert that when we're looking at,
Which are your costs?
So I don't know. I mean, if you guys have ever just thought about that, putting it out to see who would bite on it, to come in without payment, just to do it, to take a look and just get a fresh set of eyes.
Go ahead. Yep.
First of all, no. That's actually a pretty good idea. We could put it out there, but I would submit that we do that every year. We have professionals in their fields, some accounting, some in budgeting. Every single department deals with it every single year. They've become experts in their areas. And then we have all of the members of the Common Council, several of which are business owners, several of people who have been through the budgeting process or have their own expertise. You're on this commission because of your expertise. You have some investigative background, which fits right in. Former members of the Police and Fire Commission, former police officer. Everybody brings something to the table when we do our budgeting process. So I would submit that we kind of do that anyway. That and the fact that 26,000 people have access to every single line item of our budget and months to comment on it. Generally, we don't get a whole lot of people that show up. But just maybe soliciting a few?
Well, I'm just saying,
Good work.
We're looking at ideas and things like that, and I always look at, in life, no one's an expert on anything, and you can always learn as you go, and sometimes it's just getting a fresh set of eyes that other people look at it, and it's like, wow, I've never thought about that. And I do really believe that if we put that out there, there would be people who would without any fees to the city, come in and take a look, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, we'll put some feelers out there. The other thing I wanted to say is that I think I speak for every department head. There's no dessert on the table. We've had a 0% line item increase for 5 years. The dessert went away in 2020.
But what I'm saying is some of these things, and I know that we try with all the departments, right, so that one doesn't go unfunded, right, whether it's, the money that's given over to the Levitt, I don't know if it's the foundation, or for the music, for this, for that. But that's when you get down to the core of it, just like a family with a budget, you're like, all right.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, and I know even saying that, a lot of people be like, whoa, 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 you're touching on something that I love in the city, right? So I know you get to those areas. But when you start to look at it, if we have such fixed income, right, you got to tighten it, just like in a home. I mean, that's the reality of where we are.
Yeah, and we're already looking at the non-city agencies that we fund We give a couple $100 to the Memorial Day services. We give a couple $100 to the city band. Levitt and Create are two of the biggies. But if you add all of the non-city agencies that we contribute to, other than the ones that we have a business relationship, like the Business Council or the Humane Society contract, we're talking probably less than 50, definitely less than $100,000, which helps, and we are looking at that. But again, it's up to the citizens and the council to prioritize what we spend that money on. Do we need to cut the grass in the parks twice a week? I don't know if we do. But we cut it at least once a week, I believe, during the summer. Do we need to do that at every park? Well, we don't do it at every park, but generally speaking, yeah. Tonight is going to be the Levitt Amp Music Series. People want to be able to go out there and enjoy the park in the way that they are used to, and that is a maintained lawn for the seating area. They bring their picnic blankets and chairs. If we just didn't cut it, there'd be complaints. We cut years ago. We used to have lifeguards at Iverson and Buchholz. This was before my time. But when their budget was tight, they cut that program. Are they necessary? No, but there are people that complain to me every single year because we don't have lifeguards at those swimming areas. So it's a matter of prioritizing our spending.
I think some of the, an answer to when people do complain, whether the crack is filled, whether the boulevard's mowed, I think a really good question back to them is to ask them, when you call the police and they can't get there, how does that make you feel? When you have a medical emergency and they can't get there in time, is it what's more important? And I say this respectfully, is that would be a great question to ask people, because the complaining may stop because it puts it in perspective of what is important in this community. All these things are important. Parks are important, streets are important, obviously water is important. Police and fire, along with the treasurer's office, because you can't pay for any of it if you don't have the treasurer's office. Right, Corey?
Yeah. And one of the previous mayors.
But really, if somebody asked me that, I would put that back on them and say, do you want the ambulance there, or if your house is on fire, do you want them there on a timely fashion, or would you rather have this or that? In any business, you have to make concessions. There's constraints, and the government is no different. And you're right, there has been 0% increase. So somebody asked me that, that's what would be my answer. And if anybody, I can't even imagine one person in this community going, you know what, I'd rather have the boulevard mowed twice a week rather than once. But when I call the police, if they're there 10 minutes late, I could care less. No one's going to say that. Yeah. And it puts it in perspective.
Yeah, what I was going to say earlier is a previous mayor gave me that advice. The job of the city is, I want my streets to be drivable, I want my garbage picked up, and when I dial 911, I want someone to show up. And that's really it. Everything else, arguably, I don't want to say fluff, but they're extra. And that's what it is. So I would invite anyone, members included, to take a look at last year's budget and look at the line items and see what we spend money on and provide some input. We're going to be starting those budget hearings later this month or early next month, and we'll have a couple of months to talk about it. So
but that's what I'm
let
saying,
people know
too.
your priorities.
And again, it's up to whether you're going to take the suggestion or not. But I do believe that there would be.
Yeah, I'll put some feelers out there, see what we can do.
With successful people, business management degrees, that it doesn't hurt to have them come in and.
Yeah, and several of the department heads went through the Lean Six Sigma training quite a few years ago already. I guess that was, Tom, were you part of that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was kind of the same thing, right? Find efficiencies, do what you can.
So would you piggybacking off of what Denise said, if I could find 3 people that I'm not talking just average people that have an accounting degree, I'm talking a CFO of a large company, I'm talking people that run multi-million-dollar companies. Yes. If I am able to come up with 3 people, would you be willing, and the council be willing to listen to them to?
I can't speak for the council, but I mean, all of our information is public record. You don't need council approval. It's public record.
Okay.
Anyone in the entire world can have access to our budgets at stevenspoint.com/budgets.
And what my point is what I'm hoping and what I'm piggybacking off of Denise is that it is listened to, that, you know what, if this doesn't quite make sense, instead of just, we're going to do it, well, we hear what you're saying, and we're going to take that seriously.
I'll commit to you that not only after they review it, if they have suggestions, I will present those to the council.
Okay.
That's
Fair enough.
the best I can do. I don't know what anybody's going to do with it, because we don't make that decision. Heck, we don't even get to vote.
Fair enough.
Why do you think Park Ridge would be interested in this deal?
I don't.
I'm just saying.
I'm going to be very frank, and this is me only talking for me, Mike Wiza. If I was a Park Ridge resident, I don't see a big upside, other than the fact that the fire service we already contract for will be better equipped to serve me. Cost me more. So I'm paying for it. I'm not getting anything.
Well, why would it be better equipped? They're getting all the services that Stevens Point's getting. If there's a fire, we're coming. If there's an emergency, we're coming. It's not like, well, there's a different call, so we're going to.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the equipment, the personnel, the apparatus, because right now the fire department is under the same levy restrictions as my department, as the human resources department, as the economic development department. When you pull them outside the levy and they get to increase their budget by 2% plus CPI, which is generally speaking more than I get, they're able to have better turnout gear. More frequent turnout gear, I should say. We replace it on a regular basis, but it comes out of capital right now. Hoses, simple things like the Jaws of Life, the rescue boat. I don't know if you'd give it a good name yet, other than Stevens Point Water One or something. But the rescue apparatus that they use, the training that they're able to take, because now they have a little bit more to spend than they would have if they'd be under the old system, the current system.
Well, they would only have that money to spend if the new commission agrees, and they only have one seat.
Yes.
So he could be saying, I want the Jaws of Life, and 4 other people could say, nah, not this year. Sorry,
you can do that now. You can do that now.
Well, I know we can do that, but why would somebody, if I was the Park Ridge appointee, I'd sit here in the corner going, I don't have a say, you know. I can say something, but I could get outvoted every time.
And you're right, that's true, but they still have a voice.
Yeah, a mouse voice.
I would expect that the other members of that committee would have the best interest of everyone in mind. What's good for Point is good for Park Ridge.
How can you assume that? Our city council doesn't even have the best interest of the whole Stevens Point. Come on, man.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to debate that for you.
Well, I know, but let's be real.
Talk about that
let's be realistic.
We can do that. But generally speaking, to answer your question as directly as I can, gives the fire department a little more operational money. And I believe wholeheartedly that it will provide better service to both municipalities.
Okay.
And if I can
Please.
jump in on that too. So, because we did present this to Park Ridge as well, just because we wanted to keep them in the loop. And I was very frank that I'm not sure if this is going anywhere, guys, or not, or if this is an option or not, but just want you guys to know what we're talking about. And, you know, when we talked about levy limits with them and the impacts of levy limits and how they're tied to net new construction, you know, the Park Ridge Village president was pretty candid that, you know, from Park Ridge's perspective, levy limits are really hard on them because they're landlocked. So as much as we have an issue with levy limits and the levy constraints that we have, if you're Park Ridge and you're landlocked and you don't really have a lot of net new construction and you don't have a lot of developable area for new construction, it's a really tough formula for them. So definitely the feeling that I got was that they were definitely at least interested in, okay, yeah, is there a way that we can get some relief under the levy limits? Because the other thing that you have to remember is that for Park Ridge, their payment is going up every year. And every year, it's going up by 3%. You know, and I showed you the numbers before on that. Well, how are they going to fund that in their budget year after year after year if they don't have room to grow and they don't have that net new construction to get a levy limit adjustment. So they certainly weren't committal, and we didn't ask them for a final decision, because I said I'm not asking anyone for a final decision right now. But from their standpoint, I felt like on the levy limit point about that, I felt like they almost understood it like just very well, as far as that we needed to figure out a way to get some relief from this levy limit formula. And that's really what's in it for Park Ridge, is they wouldn't have to find that 3% increase for the fire department contract in their budget every year, competing with other priorities, because they'd be able to take that levy limit exception too.
Are there any other questions for Corey?
I don't know if anyone in the audience.
Yep. None here. Does anybody else care to say anything? Mr. Ostrowski?
Bob Ostrowski, 516 Michigan Avenue, citizen, former commissioner. Sitting here, I was listening to this, and I got a couple of questions and a comment. One is, as I see this, you're splitting up the police and fire department onto two boards of leadership. What's that going to do to cooperation? I know from my past experience, it's been very good under the present system. I question it, and somebody can say, well, the same people could be on the same boards. You can't guarantee that. So you could have two different boards. I could tell the fire chief to do one thing, the other board could tell the police chief to do something else. What's cooperation going to happen? Second is, most of these mergers I've ever heard of, each side is contributing something. Right now, Stevens Point is contributing 100%. Park Ridge would not be contributing any buildings, no equipment, no manpower. And why would they want to leave what they got already? They're hiring for what they want. They've got a contract to get fire protection. It's coming to them, and they're paying a bill. I agree with the commissioner right in the comment. What is in it for them? To me, the comment I got from two citizens in Park Ridge was, this is another step of Stevens Point trying to take us over. That was just two people that made that comment to me. They see it as a way of Stevens Point taxing them. And I guess it is. From what I sit here and listen, it sure sounds like it. I can't say I'm against the idea, but I can't say I'm for it either. To me, if we were merging, say, with Plover, that makes more sense. I refer back to a few years ago when each Plover wanted a aerial truck and we wanted an aerial truck. We came to a conclusion, we bought it together, and then we bought a second one together later. I can see that type of stuff, but you're not going to see that with Park Ridge. So I don't see the urgency for the deadlines that we're told. The fire department's making money off of Park Ridge right now. It isn't something that's got to be addressed by December. For the city's purpose, it does have to, because that's when their budgets have to be done. So I think this could be misrepresented. And finally, anybody knows me, I get long-winded. Finally, they're worried about referendums on this idea. Seems to me, how many school board referendums have we seen over the last 10 to 12 years? I think Wausau's gone through like 4 years in a row. So I think if you're worried about a referendum, sure, it can get shot down. But then again, I thought the request for more firefighters was going to get shot down, and it passed very well. So you can't assume what's going to happen one way or another. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mary?
Yeah, Mary Kneebone, District 7 Alder Liaison to Police and Fire. First time this came up, I thought, man, there's no way that I could ever support this, because it just, adds more of a tax burden on people like me on a fixed income. On the other hand, there's some things I'm willing to raise my taxes for, and police and fire service is one of them. I echo that Park Ridge isn't bringing enough to the equation. If we could get this spread out further among other fire services like Amherst, Stockton, Hull, Plover, then we start to see real true efficiencies, and we spread the pain a little bit further. And I think in the end, we're going to have to do something like this. I don't know how, or we're going to have to start cutting city services. And that's just the reality. Costs keep going up. And the further we can spread the pain of this, the easier it is for me on a fixed income to support something like this. Because it's important to me to call, when I call 911, that I know the police are going to be there, I know the firefighters are going to be there, I know the paramedics are going to be there. But let's spread this out some. Let's truly make an effort to see if we can get some other municipalities involved. It makes a lot of sense. Because otherwise, I think just keep going the way we're going with Park Ridge makes sense. But again, we've got budget problems across the city, across all the departments. But I don't know that we can just do this for Park Ridge and not say it's just a way to get around raising taxes. Let's explore let's take a serious look at this. Let's spend a year. Let's try to work it with Park Ridge and Plover and Stockton and Hull and whoever else might be out there might be interested in doing something like this. But I don't think we're getting enough efficiencies from the perspective of the tax increases from just Park Ridge. But I'm open-minded to a wider fire district. I think that makes sense. And I think you put someone from the police and fire, the police board on that board, and because the communication, I'm concerned about that as well. Communication between departments when you've split the two boards. But if you've got a representative from the police commission on the fire district board, you keep that line of communication. So I would see something like that. Maybe an alder or two, maybe the person in this position, the liaison, sits on that board. I don't know. But you need to have the communication lines maintained. So anyway, just some thoughts.
Thank you, Mary. Go ahead, Jerry.
Jerry Moore, 317 Division Street North, former member, former councilman. There's a lot to digest here. And I think there's one large question that Mr. Zenner was trying to get at, that how do you dissolve this body or take away the power of managing the fire department? The council didn't set this body up. This body was done by referendum. The council does not have the authority to take their power away in directing the fire department. So I don't know that how you're going to do that. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. And I don't think it is in semantics in the word choices of the legislature, of the legal part of it. I think that needs to be figured out before this goes a lot farther. The other question is, if this is all over $139,000 a year, there are much more efficient ways to find that than to do all of this that we've spent 2 hours almost talking about here today. I don't remember how long the last meeting was, but it was also a long amount of time, and the council's put in a lot of time on it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think this is going way too fast, and this is not the appropriate way to look at this time. Everybody needs to stop and take a breath and figure out if this is really an efficient way to do this, because I don't think it is, and I think it's a very divisive subject.
Thank you, Jerry.
And, I guess on that, Jerry, I know that the council, as you're well, or the commission, we have access to, if we so choose, to our own attorneys to get the viewpoint on it, which I think of what you're saying. I understand what Logan's saying is everything he's looked at, there's no case law, there's nothing that says that they can't just go ahead with the city council and do this. It might be something that we need to pursue with our own attorney and take a look at it to say, the legalities behind this.
I understand. All right, any other comments? Is Mayor Wiza, is he in the hall? I'd like to give him an opportunity to, if he left. Okay, I was going to say I want to give him the opportunity to, if he had any final thoughts or comments. Okay. But he's gone, you're sure?
Yeah, it looks like he left.
Okay. All right. Corey, do you have anything else? Do you want to take the mayor's?
No, I don't think
Mayor's, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Because I want to give full opportunity here. So, because there's been a lot that's been said between the commissioners. There's been members of the community, and so I want to be fair that this isn't a one-sided deal here.
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate that. So, but no, I don't have anything else to say at this point. So.
All right, we'll move on then. Number 8, Police Chief's report. Chief.
All right, very quickly.
Hey, only 25 minutes.
Yes. I'm really excited about tomorrow. We've got Officer Alex Toddy and Officer Marcus Soa graduating from the 720 Law Enforcement Academy. And this morning, we swore in Daniel King, and he will be attending the 720 Academy starting tomorrow as well. So we'll have, on August 11th, we're going to be having a little ceremony for those 2 officers and getting them into the Step 0 program. I also want to state on August 1st, Detective Kent Lepak, who has been working white-collar crimes since 2005 here, retired from law enforcement. He had 25 years in total and 22 years here with the city. He's an incredible loss to everybody here at the PD and to the city as well. July was a busy month for events. In all of July, Lieutenant Johnson's been preparing for the National Night Out, which was held at Saremore Park on August 5th. It was a great turnout. July 3rd through the 5th, everybody is aware of the Riverfront Rendezvous activities. There was a couple hiccups. Lieutenant Ben Edenbrook kind of took that over, and everything went very well, considering a couple of hiccups in there. We went through another application process, and Assistant Chief Williams identified 4 individuals that would go on to background investigations. We are down to, I think, 2 now. 2 are out. And on July 18th last year, if you remembered, for Capitol, we had asked for new handheld radios. It was for an officer safety issue. We did not have service in certain areas of the city and in schools and buildings. We got these brand new Motorola LTE Wi-Fi radios. So now we have complete coverage everywhere within the city limits. July 22nd, Lieutenant Roser and Sergeant Wiersbe successfully completed their probationary periods. And on July 29th, led by Lieutenant Johnson, we had Cops at Culver's fundraiser, Lights for Christmas, raising money to get gift cards that we hand away at Christmas time. And the very last thing I'm going to touch on is, obviously, I had handed you guys all my retirement letter. It's going to be January 5th of 2026. I also received a letter from Assistant Chief Rotier, and it is his birthday on January 5th, and he is retiring on that day as well. With that said, my plan is to, on Monday, put out a process for promotional opportunity here at the PD for Assistant Police Chief for the administration side of it, and identifying somebody, hopefully by early November, that can actually shadow Assistant Chief Rotier for when he retires. That person is comfortable in that position. But again, my plan is on Monday to start that internal process for promotion to Assistant Chief of Administrations. And that is it for the police chief's report.
Chief, I have one question. I see on July 28th of 25, there was a sick raccoon roaming the neighborhood near Portage and Second. Did you get that raccoon?
Actually, we did, and we ended up having an officer who ended up getting some blood in his mouth from that raccoon and has been getting shots ever since.
That's why I asked the question. It's a very serious thing, and I would encourage anybody in the community, if you see any animal that looks like it may be sick, it's foaming from the mouth. I'm not a doctor, but if something's wrong, say something, because from my understanding, rabies treatment is very, very, very painful, and I would hate to see a child, an adult, anybody accidentally go, oh, that's a nice thing, I want to go pet it, because you know there's people out there that'll do that. So I encourage the community to say something if you see something that doesn't seem right. All right, any other?
Yeah, with the AC process, you've been running short, obviously, all year with personnel, so not going to be an issue funding that position, I'm assuming?
There will be no issue at all funding that position.
Okay.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the chief's report.
Let Kirschling make a second. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 9, discussion with possible action on moving forward with the employment of entry-level firefighters, paramedics. Chief?
Yeah, so currently, everyone is aware of the environment we deal with in public safety, whether it comes to law enforcement, fire, EMS, and the shortage of the employees. And when we get that opportunity to go through a process throughout the month and put out conditional offers of employment, I feel that's important to be able to do that right away, if at all possible. And I know that the Police and Fire Commission has given me the latitude to do this in the past, and it's worked out well for us. So what I'm looking to do is continue to move forward throughout this next month to continue to do interviews. And if we feel that the candidate fits the qualifications of an entry-level firefighter, paramedic, or the contractual language with the paramedic candidate or fire candidate, to offer them a conditional offer of employment, and then obviously having to then meet all the requirements prior to actually hiring them. With the ability to be able to do that in the past few months, normally what I do is then bring those names back to the commission the following month that we put those conditional offers out to. As of right now, we have 2 that are going to start August 18th. We have 1 already slated for the academy on January 5th. We're going to be putting out some potential conditional offers here in the next few days, and I believe we just got 4 more new applicants who applied for the department. So things are actually moving forward at the Stevens Point Fire Department, and being able to fill some of those entry-level positions, and we keep moving forward, and that's what I'm looking to do.
Chief, would it make it just easier, and I mean, because you're looking for possible action of, moving forward with the employment of these entry-level firefighters, paramedics, to just make this a permanent thing, that you don't have to come with that, item for us? And then, because you always say you come back with the final candidates, I mean, can we just make this a permanent thing to make it easier on you?
I don't want to speak for the police chief, but as the fire chief, I will tell you that if we could do that on both sides of the house and be able to move forward with our processes and hiring qualified and good candidates and then just bringing those names back to the commission after hired, it would be a lot easier for us to be able to do that on the spot or within days, because I'm talking within hours. People are going to other interviews, and if we're not offering those candidates those positions, they move on rather quickly.
And I would, yes, he is speaking for me as well. We do have that issue as well. When you do interviews, you might get one or two very good candidates. If you do, they are looking at several other agencies, and other agencies are in the process of hiring them. They will hire them and then do their background after they hire them. I agree with the chief, though. That'd be phenomenal if we could do that, to offer them a job immediately on the spot, pending background and obviously approval.
We'd have to put that on next month's agenda.
Yeah.
Or,
That's a good idea. That's the landscape's changed.
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
before it was like you would hire one, maybe two a year. 3 would be a huge year. Both of departments are running short of personnel, and it's like trying to,
I think
block a dam.
We can pass this motion today, but
Right,
then the
we'll
next, to do permanent thing. for-
right, so
just going
that
forward.
would, I don't want to go any further on that because it's
Right.
not on the agenda, but I think we can discuss that further down the road.
So I'll make a motion moving forward with the employment of entry-level firefighters, paramedics, to approve that.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Any other questions, comments?
And again, I will be bringing those names back next month, and I appreciate the support and being able to move forward with this.
All right, we have a motion, a second. No other questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 10, discussion with possible action on the ability to run an internal, external assessment center for an Assistant Chief of EMS position within the Stevens Point Fire Department. Chief.
Yes. So with talking with Chief Gemza and knowing the Police and Fire Commission's views on mentoring, succession planning, and making sure that there's transparency and there's that right transitional period within our organizations, whether it's police or fire, Chief Gemza has come to me and we've sat down and had some long discussions and has come to the conclusion that after the first of the year or shortly after, he's going to be leaving the fire department after several years, 29 and a half, almost 30 years. But in that process, what I'd like to be able to do is, he's been in his current position now for the last 14, 15 years. There's obviously going to be a need for that transitional period and what it's going to take to learn that. What I would like to do is run a internal, external process for a new potential Assistant Chief of EMS within our organization and post it for approximately 3 to 4 weeks, then run an assessment center, and then if we come up with a candidate that we feel is the right fit for that position, prior to coming back to the Police and Fire Commission, we know and we've discussed that I would actually have to have a letter in hand from Chief Gemza with a date officially stating that when that retirement was going to be. I would then be looking to offer a conditional offer with the approval at that point, plan on bringing that person in maybe for about a 6 to 8 week transitional period as Chief Gemza is looking to do the exiting, and we would be doing the onboarding with our new Assistant Chief of EMS. So we would look at starting that now through potentially the whole process taking till the first of the year. Nothing would be given out officially until approval would come from the PFC. And since we're talking about financial impacts and what that would look like, the assessment center is pretty minimal as far as the financial impact to the department. And look, as you can see in our financial summary budgets, currently right now, there is that money set aside. We're currently at 38.4% is where we should be remaining in the budget for EMS, and there's 41.7%. So there is money set aside for that process at the end of the year as well.
I'll make a motion for you to have the ability to run an internal, external assessment center or an Assistant Chief of EMS position.
Second by Barrett.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 11, Fire Chief Report, EMS report, and EM report. Chief.
All right, we'll try to go quick as well. Riverfront Rendezvous obviously was a success. We ran into some hiccups along the way, but we were able to get everything accomplished and get the fireworks up in the air, even with the rain. I did want to point out, though, and circle back, both the Finance Committee and Common Council approved, just like the PFC did this last month, the continuation to look at our current partnership with Mid-State Technical College and what that looks like in the future for a public safety center / station out on the east side of the city. We did take in our new command vehicle for our battalion chiefs that has arrived and is in service. We did some honor flight, Stevens Point Fire Department military veteran flights out at the airport this past month. We were able to fly some of our past and current members who also had military service, Jim Brettel, Charlie Skiba, Armando Ramon, and Brandon Hageman. And we're looking to do more flights in the future next year. The picture, as you can all see in your presentation, I feel it's important that history is part of the fire department and part of tradition, and it's important to understand where we've come from, where we're at, and where we're going. And that picture is a picture of the Stevens Point Fire Department's first ever aerial apparatus. It was a Peter Persch, and it was in service from 1951 to 1967. Actually was around the firehouse for a little bit longer. About 3-4 years ago, I was able to get my hands on it, working with a collaborative effort with Madison Fire and a historical center down there. I did bring it back to make it my office desk. It's a little large to be my office desk. So we actually put it in the classroom. We're still doing some work on it, but it's something that is going to be kept with the department for the future to understand a little bit about our history. So we're working some things out, but it's been a great addition, and our young firefighters really appreciate the new old apparatus. And then as far as the EM report, obviously next-gen software upgrades were completed with the warning sirens with the Sheboygan warning systems. That has been in effect for a while, and it's been very successful. Thank you to our EM coordinator here in the city, Justin Malin. And then lastly, I'd like to bring up DC Terrence Sinner, Division Chief Sinner, so if you can just make your way up to at least the podium here. So at least the camera can see him as well as he's sitting back in the corner. When we talk about mentoring and succession planning, and we're looking at things for the future, I've pushed some of our members to look at additional accreditation or certifications within positions in the department. This last month, he went out and worked with the Commission on Professional Credentialing and received his Chief Fire Officer designation. And that's a pretty significant thing when it comes to the fire service. Following an extensive peer review process, this designation recognizes and demonstrates excellence in 7 measures of components: experience, education, professional development, professional contributions, association memberships, community involvement, and technical competency. When these people get these designations in the fire service, they become a master of the career field. as a CFO, a Chief Fire Officer designation, there are around 2,200 worldwide. And to take it one step further, and I'm going to jump ahead and piggyback on this because I didn't see this till I walked in today. He's been working hard to even further that and went back and got his fire marshal designation. And there are only 287 that have got that designation worldwide. And he is one of them. So I've been pushing a few other members within our organization to look at some of these designations as well and getting credentialed and really truly taking that next step. But that's a significant milestone in somebody's career when there's only 287 worldwide who have that credentialing certification. So I wanted to point that out to this commission. I wanted to say congratulations on all the hard work and effort, and he truly is a master in his career field as far as it's concerned in the fire service. So congratulations.
Thank you, Chief, appreciate it.
Fire Marshal Center, it's as the chief said, I know it's a huge deal, and the citizens of Stevens Point are very fortunate to have you as part of the Stevens Point Fire Department. So congratulations, I mean that very sincerely. It's not to be taken lightly at all.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Stick around, so yeah.
I'll agree with that. He does. He makes my whole command staff makes my life a lot easier. But yes, don't be running off anywhere.
Your resume goes through him.
So with that, that's all I had under the fire, EMS, and EM reports.
All right, any questions? I'll make a motion to put the fire chief report, EMS report, and EM report on file.
I'll second.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Pingle second. We got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We are adjourned.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.